The following podcast may be explicit. Shedcast presents Adventures from the Shed, a tabletop RPG podcast. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com. Welcome to our first sidebar podcast. In this episode, we talk about ourselves and our past experiences. This podcast was created to share more information about each of us. Mickey, JJ, Kurt, Mike, and Joe. Enjoy the podcast. Mickey, talk about yourself.
Oh, I don't want to go first.
All right, JJ, talk about Mickey.
All right. So we met in Florida.
What's your name?
My name is James Stevens. I go
Who's
by
your
JJ.
daddy? Is he rich? Is he rich like me?
Who's that?
Go on.
And,
Cut!
No cut. We're just going.
I
I'll
met
cut
Mickey
stuff
when I
out
was
later
in
if I
Florida,
want to.
and I actually met her at a mini golf course.
He followed me around like a stalker.
Awesome.
Great.
Not my fault. Your butt's cute.
So you were by yourselves at the
No, we were
mini-golf?
part of this group called ENA, Events and Adventures. So it's basically a club, a planning.
It's a sorority fraternity group, basically for
For
single
single
people. It's essentially high school all over again without the actual learning.
They tout it as an event planning service for single people.
I mean, you do everything from wine tasting to skydiving. I mean, that's how I got into frisbee golf, and that's a fun activity.
Wine diving or wine tasting
Wine diving.
wine diving. That's exactly where I was going. Wine tasting while skydiving sounds like heaven.
Right?
Craziness.
So
long
we met
story short,
DNA, and
He
then
stalked me for a while,
Wine diving.
I stalked you on Facebook.
and now we're married.
Yay!
So JJ's the stalker of the group, just in
Yes.
case that wasn't clear.
I'm going to find out where Joe's honeymoon restaurant is. I'm going to go and
Okay.
find
All
out.
you have to do is ask Bridget. She'll probably tell you.
I'm sure.
She would tell me if I
I'm just going to
wanted her
stare at you through the picturesque story window they got there.
Right through the window.
Just
Creeper.
Yeah. There'll probably be a line of people doing that.
JJ's about to show his hairy nipples.
yay, hairy nipples.
Well, the camera was going at the time,
I
so
am a veritable Chewbacca.
that's great.
I
What is a
I-
veritable Chewbacca?
nearly
Christmas
won the
balls.
hairy man contest on a Carnival Cruise Line.
If it
Wow.
wasn't for your head,
Really?
right?
The only
No.
reason why I didn't win is because the wife of the winner was on the judges panel.
Nice.
It's
I thought you were going to say the wife was
Rigged.
hairier than you.
Rigged.
So you want to know a little bit about...
For those of you listening at home, this sounds like an unattractive group, but I have to tell you, JJ, he radiates life and vitality.
That's just my beard.
He's radiating some Mexican food.
I can't call Taco Bell Mexican. Like, that's
That doesn't even count.
that's like saying beer is Irish. Like,
That's a good point. But Budweiser's not Irish. It sounds
No.
like-
So what else do you want to know? So a
Oh,
little
what
bit
else
about,
do you want to share? Are you married?
I am married. I'm married to James over here. 3 years. Known him for 5. We have one fur baby. Her name is Boomer. And she thinks she's a lap dog, even though she weighs about 85, 90 pounds.
and those of you who know, Boomer is a girl.
Yes,
Yes.
Boomer is a girl. I named her after Boomer on BSG.
Battlestar Galactica, for
For
those
those who
not
don't
know.
know. Let's
They're
see.
listening to a
We
D&D
start-
podcast.
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't know in the first Battlestar Galactica it was Moffat.
Moffat, that's right.
I haven't watched the new one.
Well, Moffat was the dog, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
robot dog.
But Boomer's the...
Boomer is actually, she's actually a Cylon. She's the one who
She's
went
the Asian
after
chick, right?
a-
Yep.
Oh, I love her.
Well, see, okay, we just coming back from Dragon Con, I can say that there are people who are totally in love with, Harry Potter and D&D and everything else like that, but don't like BSG and Star Trek and other things. So just because you are in the world of geekiness doesn't mean that you encompass all of the geek
Yeah.
kingdom.
There's also all the people who loved 3 7/8 of Battlestar Galactica until the last episode, and then
Yeah.
threw their television across the room and screamed and cried.
It's like, yeah.
It had, for those who don't know, what was to me the worst series finale in history.
Spoilers!
Really?
Spoilers?
I'm just telling you, it's
And
freaking fantastic.
There's
until the
Sopranos
end.
there's Soprano fans out there who would argue with you that that's the worst series
True.
finale.
Good point. Good point.
They
Tony
just
lives
wanted
forever.
someone to die.
It's interesting because I'm not a sci-fi fan generally. I'm much more a fantasy fan, but I really loved both the original and the new Battlestar Galactica.
But the BSG was more of a drama. But anyways, back on topic of
Back.
how we met and about ourselves.
Yeah, sure.
Ourselves. So I've been playing D&D for about 2.5 years, going on 3. I started really because I got sick of just being by myself. I just cut out.
You
I got
did,
sick of
and then
staying
came
at
back.
home by myself while I was a closet nerd and I married an overt nerd. And he was into like gaming and
Obtuse. You're an cute nerd. I'm an obtuse nerd.
Oh, she's cute, all right.
I am cute. So, I mean, I was a WoW widow for a while, and I hated that. And he's like, let's go play this game. You're into sci-fi. You're into fantasy. You might like this. So we went, and I, fought it the whole time. Like, I'm not going to like this. This sucks.
I don't want to dress up
There's
like
a
an elf.
board game, dice. This doesn't make any sense. You're such a loser. And it turned out I really liked the game. I liked the aspect of role-playing. I liked the fact that you can pretend to be something else for an evening and go on these really cool adventures and meet great people, have great conversations, and just all around have a good time.
That's a part
So-
I like, too.
That's what attracted me to D&D.
And me. When
A match made in heaven.
Yeah, you're the lucky one.
The
So
social part of it's huge for me too. I mean, that's I played a lot as a kid. I'm Kurt Schumacher, by the way. And,
Hi, Kurt Schumacher.
Hi, Kurt Schumacher. I just turned 40 this year, and I have 2 young boys, which is part of what got me back into tabletop role playing.
So how many days since your last RPG session?
So it's been 2 weeks since my
2
last
weeks since your
RPG.
last-
But I may be getting divorced because I'm in the process of setting up 2 completely other games, and my wife is like, "You are not allowed to go to karate 4 times a week
Yeah.
and have 3 D&D games going. Like that doesn't
Did I
work."
start this?
That's a
You
lot
did
of
start this.
karate.
You're number one.
Woo, look at me.
You're number one. But I'm a lawyer by day, and I need escapism by night. So I played a ton of first edition basic D&D in Red Box, Keep on the Borderlands, Ghost Tower of Inverness, with a couple of friends, and we would literally like sit under the slide on the playground in 4th grade and with our graph paper and our dice and play. And I loved it. And we made up most of our adventures because we didn't have the money to buy the modules and all that. But once I got into computer games, I started playing Zork and then Ultima, and Ultima 4, and eventually, some good RPGs on the PlayStation. I love now the Dragon Age games, and to a lesser degree Skyrim and all that. But when you see that you put 130 hours in on a computer game by yourself, at some point, especially if you have 2 kids and a job and a wife, you're like, I probably should.
Socialize.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I just missed the social aspect of it, and so I started playing Pathfinder Society at Big Robot Games, and just played a few games with them. But I loved it. It was a real diverse group of players, younger, older, more experienced, new players. Really fun. And then that game fell apart, but that hooked me on Pathfinder, and I started buying the books and reading all the books and the Inner-Sea World Guides and the Inner-Sea Gods and the Bestiaries and all that. And then I got into the history of D&D. I had not played 3rd and 4th edition at all, although I was familiar with them. And when I saw that 5th was coming out, I got really jazzed about the possibilities for that. Jazzed. And when the opportunity to play with this group came up,
I haven't heard
it was
that since
ideal.
the 80s, sorry.
But just like Mickey said, to spend 4 or 5 hours,
Yeah.
like being someone else, and not that I don't like my life. People say, well, why do you need to escape your life? That's silly. Like in the modern world, in modern American society, very few of us get to be a hero ever.
Right.
Ever. And to be able to do it every 2 weeks or once a month or once a week and be part of a group or a party or a clan and have an exciting adventure is super fun. And then if you're doing it with cool people, all the better.
Yeah, maybe we can find some cool people for you.
Yeah,
and
one of these
get
days.
that started.
one of these days I'll find
just
out.
turn the AC
Yeah.
down lower.
I think it's important. What's up?
Just
turn
turn
the
the
AC
AC
down
down.
low.
We'll become cool.
We'll get cooler. We could probably turn it a little lower. But one of the things you mentioned about that escapism, a lot of people do that just going to the movies or even just watching a movie on TV.
or alcohol, or
Right.
there's
So-
other various
Right, or
forms
even
of-
watching a football game. People get into the game. They think they're on the team when they're
Right.
watching a football
they
game.
think that their shouts and cheers
Right.
can
And
actually
I mean, I'm
influence-
guilty of it as well, but, I don't dress up as the dungeon master when I
should.
play this. I probably should. That's
That
not
would
the
make
point.
it so much
But I
fun.
don't, yet people dress up like football players.
Right. Right. What's interesting is since
Which I also do.
when PlayStation 1 came out, I started playing, a lot of games. I mean, not 12 hours a day of WoW or anything like that, but for a guy who had a real job and was in grad school, I was the gamer of my friends. But that, and now the tabletop gaming has just completely usurped television watching and movies. I mean, I still have a few shows I love and I'm religiously following, but if a show is not really good, I drop it like a bad habit. And movies now, I have almost no patience for because they're so passive. Mm-hmm. Like, I watched what was objectively a pretty good action movie the other night, but I was like, I would rather be either playing this on PlayStation or doing this with my buddies around a table. I just don't have any patience for 2 hours of sitting there watching someone else, unless it's fantastic. I just don't have the patience for it.
That's the argument I have with Mickey all the time about how I can get my stories two ways, passively or interactively. And I would much rather influence the story than just digest a story.
Right. And what's interesting is reading is in between, because I'm a big reader and I do really love reading. And it doesn't feel as passive to me as movies, although when I think about it objectively, it's closer to a movie than a role-playing game. Right. But I think there's still so much imagination involved in how you visualize what's on the page that it just doesn't feel as passive as a movie to me. But
I want Choose Your Own Adventure to come back.
Heck yes.
Remember those?
I want pop-up Choose Your Own Adventure.
That's what's fun about having kids. I have a son who's going to turn 9 in 2 weeks, and then a 6-year-old, and they're into Choose Your Own Adventure. Nice. And I get to revisit that, and it's really fun. It's funny. I was geeky in my own way as a kid, but I never read comic books. I was very into Star Wars. I was into D&D, but I never did comics. I never did a lot of that stuff. Having kids, man, I go to the comic book store every single week now. I read graphic novels. I'm into all these games I never would have played, and it's kind of like a second chance at being a kid in some ways.
That's cool.
And then there's the silent one. His name's Mike.
Yeah.
I'm Mike.
I'm Mike Robertson. I just turned 30 at the end of June.
And how long has it been since your last RPG session?
I played last night.
About 23 hours.
Yes, but I am married. I've been married for almost 3 years. I have 2 dogs, and they're both big and crazy. Before I got into tabletop, I Mr. Schumacher.
Mr. Schumacher.
Really enjoyed the...
That's a villain name right there.
It does sound like
it is.
Video game RPGs.
Who's scared of maker of shoes?
Well, I think if you throw an air in front of it, like Air Schumacher, it sounds particularly dastardly.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No.
But I played video games for years and years, since college, really, and I've tried Dungeons and Dragons like one time in college and really didn't like it at the time, but I got it close to 30 and I was like, man, as an adult, it's really hard to make friends now. So I was looking online, I'm like, well, I tried the Dungeons and Dragons once, and it was really fun when it could be really fun if I had the right group. Maybe I'll try it, and it was totally different at the store. They played it totally different than what I had played. They actually used the minis at the time, and there was a lot of people there, and you'd have different people and big groups. And
so that was playing Encounters, right?
Yes, right. Yes. I got my start playing several seasons of Encounters. Then,
which is the D&D organized play, right?
Yeah, it's like their weekly...
Like the Pathfinder Society one. Right?
Yeah. And then sort of transitioned to playing just with friends because the store closed, and then switched to Joe's Monday night Dungeon World game, which I really like, and got into this podcast somehow. So I
by saying I want to be in.
By saying, I want to be in. But so far I think
wasn't random.
It's really great, and I look forward to doing more of it.
And it's important to note that Mike is the creator of a fantastic seal that you all cannot see, but that is dead center in the middle of our table.
Well, he did the logo as well. That is going to be the picture for every episode.
Oh,
fantastic. It's on the website. It's
out there.
Awesome.
Adventures from the
I
Shed.
am a graphic designer for my day job.
And a sticker applier for his
And
night job.
a sticker applier. So,
I need a new law firm logo. Maybe we should talk later.
hey, just give me a call.
All right.
Adventures from the law firm. Well, I guess I'm Joe Young, and this is my place. This is my house.
It's your shed.
Shed.
Well, this is my house. But I am also married, and I was just mentioning before we started, tomorrow night is my 18th wedding anniversary. I'm reminded because my wife put on the inside of my ring when we were married, so
Nice.
it's easy for me to remember.
I had that done too.
Yeah. It makes it so
When I'm
much
drunk in the
easier.
gutter, I can be like, "Hey, I'm Kurt, and I'm married to Catherine."
Mine is just initials. So
Oh, that doesn't work
I'm
if you're
like
intoxicated.
Jay, and I married Bly, whatever that is. Right? But
Mine's the date.
yeah, I have the date on it too. I'm like, all right. But I have 2 kids, 2 girls, and they really want to play. But overall, I'm not ready for them to play yet because they don't have the attention span that I need.
How old
really
are they?
To start 9 and 11. They want to play, and we make stuff up as we go. When you had mentioned running stuff for kids as maybe a project, I had mentioned a few times with my kids, we've set up miniatures, and I have an easel pad with grid on it, and we just put them out there, and I'm like, all right, so the bad guys are coming to get you. Roll that 20-sided die. They can move 5 spaces. They're coming to get you. Now you come get them. And we do like easy mechanics. A 10 or over, you hit them. If you didn't get a 10, then you missed. And then I
Deep
try and get them
rules
to
on
use their
Candyland.
imagination. Right. We actually we used Candyland cards for a little made-up D&D game. So we use the figures on the Candyland board with the Candyland cards. So, you can move the dragon 2 purple spaces. And
You should totally
stuff like
publish that thing.
It's awesome. I'm not a big fan of minis, as we'll talk about, but they are awesome with kids. And the Pathfinder beginner box comes with this huge collection of little cardboard. They call them pawns, and they're like cheap minis, but they're just pawns in a stand. But they have them for all the basic monsters you would ever fight in a starter set type adventure, and the kids love that because you can throw out a goblin, and a skeleton, and a black dragon, and they're like totally can visualize
the
it.
visual reference
Yep.
is huge, right? And it's great playing with them. I started when I was that age, actually, now that I think about it, because I was in 6th grade. My daughter just went into 7th grade. I played the original D&D box.
With your graph
remember,
paper?
I still remember dwarf was a class. All right, elf was a class. You were the elf. I had those characters, played a lot there, but then didn't play for 70 years or so. And then I started back up a few years ago. Really, where I started back playing was also at Encounters over at Big Robot before they went to hell and then closed.
So Mike is 30. I just turned 40. About how old are you all?
36.
36.
29.
20?
Wow.
Cougar.
Yeah.
So 36. You and I are fairly close. So you can remember original first edition, second edition. I remember just walking around with graph paper, and you had to make your map while you're playing in your head, and you'd have X's for traps, and it was,
I think we've seen by the last time we played that Mickey's map
Mick-
skills are
Yeah.
not.
Mickey will not be.
we should put this on video. This is the map of us heading into a goblin's den.
I got the job done.
I think I'm going to take over cartographer next time.
When I was cleaning up and I looked at that, I said, "That's a keeper. That's going on my refrigerator."
Look, it's even to scale. The halfling is so much smaller.
Yep.
It's to scale.
It's awesome.
So everyone else is the size of the cave,
Yes.
but the halfling's half the size of the cave.
They have to
so that's
crouch
pretty good.
to get in.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about playing games as an adult that's different from kids is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but our brains are a lot more strategic at this point. Like, I feel like when I was 8,
Oh, I got lots of strategery.
a lot of strategery, like W. When I was 8, it was all about the imagination and the creativity, and just visualizing the monsters and the heroes and the elves. Whereas now, I still love that. I love the role playing, but I think we, as a party, have to work together much more strategically to survive and to level up to play the type of adventures that we're going to want to play. When I think about the other games that I play, I spend a lot of time playing chess. I'm not particularly good at it, but I love it. And then I was telling Joe when we were kind of doing the interview to get in the group and all that, I've started playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, which I never played when it was popular, but I got into about 2 years ago, just casual play. And I love that. It has the fantasy side to it, but you can ignore that all if you want and just play it as a math game.
See, and I only played it when it was popular. All of my cards, the newest cards I had were 1997.
Yeah, so you were...
So I had the cards back to the beginning when they didn't even have a date on them. But I actually sold those off to Big Robot to get other games that I was playing now because I wasn't playing them anymore.
But I've talked a lot to adults who play now, and a lot of us are just almost as much into reading the books and reading about other games as actually playing, which I think is a function to some degree of not having people to play with. I mean, it's a pretty small community of us who like playing.
I think you're wrong there. I think it's the perception of people think they're going to be ostracized by coming out of the closet. Like when she said earlier she was a closet nerd, I don't understand why we have this stigma associated gamers. Like, why do they have to be mouth-breathing, basement-dwelling, Mountain Dew-sucking herbivores?
Oh, but Mountain Dew is so good.
Well, there was a lot of stigma. If you think, in the 80s, there was a lot of stigma around D&D.
Yes.
Yeah.
And everyone would play in, back alleys and on the playground and hide it because...
That's because Satan might come and grab you.
Back alley
Right.
D&D.
Devil worshippers.
They were.
They're back in the back of the course, rolling a D20 up against the brick wall.
Well, and remember, if you got to a certain level, they said that it was actually a cult, and when you got high enough, when your character leveled up high enough, there was a secret initiation, and you got brought into special chambers and pledged yourself to the devils.
I've
But
never
JJ,
gotten that high.
well, JJ has a good point, and I think it's interestingly mixed because on the one hand, we're kind of in the age of geek to some degree, but it's still pretty darn geeky to spend 5 hours 2, 3, 4 times a month playing. Like, there's a difference between I watch The Big Bang Theory or I like Lord of the Rings, and I know the difference between 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition D&D, and am happy to talk about it. Having said that, I totally do agree with you. There are a lot of people who are interested, and in fact, I have a group of friends who objectively would be the cool kids, director of marketing for a great restaurant group in Greenville, a doctor at a great, they were good friends that I would just go drinking with. I would never
Not for
think
the next
about
30 days
doing
you won't.
this with, and we were all tanked in Asheville one night, and I was talking about this. They are dying to play. They want me to run a game. Like, I've got my cleric. The doctor wants to be the cleric because he wants to be the healer. Gina is super closet.
Typecast much?
Yeah.
He's like I'm comfortable with it. I don't have to go outside my boundaries. But I have one
Tell him
woman
he's
who's
got to play a troll. Right.
dying to be the elf. I literally made a party over cocktails, and I was like, "You guys are all just drunk. You don't know what you're talking. You're not going to remember this in the morning." They're like, "No, I swear, if you play a game, we'll try it at least 3 or 4 times." All right.
Yeah.
Done?
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, what's so different about devoting 3, 4, 5 hours to a television show on a weekly basis, versus doing this for a couple hours?
Or I think a lot of guys, maybe women too. I can't speak for them, but especially those who think about it, become increasingly bored with athletics. And particularly as college athletics gets more professionalized and things. It's just, I'm not saying I don't like to watch sports. I do, but I don't have the passion for it I had 10 or 20 years ago. And so, I mean, if you stop watching sports, or if you cut your sports back by 75%, you get 5, 10, 15 hours a week back that you can do something else with.
That's D&D time, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
There's so
and-
many
and-
people that talk
and-
about it at work the next day. The show that the Big Bang Theory you mentioned. There's one guy I work with that he'll talk about it for an hour and a half, which is longer than the show runs. Right. And he'll talk about it that long at work, and he'll talk about that as something someone else did that he thought was funny. Where, from what we were saying before, JJ was saying the interactivity, we did something that was fun that we can then talk about. And to me, there's a big difference there.
Well, and what's nice about D&D, and this would go for other role-playing games too, certainly I just don't know them as well. There's 2 levels, right? I mean, the people who've been playing it forever know Orca and know Keep on the Borderlands. I mean, there's a certain level of in there, and I'm not there because I haven't played that much. But then on the other hand, there are people who are totally new to it who don't even know what the Forgotten Realms is, and we get to kind of be a teacher to them. I consider myself a noob, but I can still initiate people into this world that they don't know. And not everyone's going to like it, not everyone's going to groove on it, but some of them are.
Relive that wonder. It's like even when you introduce someone who's never seen Battlestar Galactica, you get to watch them watch it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know when that part's coming up that you want to
And
go
you're
look
waiting,
at their face.
and you're waiting.
Right.
You're
like
waiting.
you're hoping they have the same reaction that you had. And then when they don't, you say, "You're stupid. I'm going to rewind it."
Wait, pause. Do you realize what just happened there? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, and that, to be honest, has been frustrating for me. On the one hand, I think the reason my wife and I have such a great marriage is we're very complementary and we do a lot of stuff together, but we also have some very different hobbies. On the other hand, most of the time when I really get into something, she ends up liking it and vice versa. And she has been very resistant to Magic and D&D and Pathfinder and all that. And part of me is like, I just forget about it. It's fine. I don't need that. But on the other hand, part of me is like, I kind of wish you would see what's cool about this. And she does objectively understand. Like, she can say, I know it's creative. She understands objectively, but she hasn't experienced it. And I want to be like, just give it a try. I think you might just take a hit. You might like it.
I try to talk my wife into it all the time, and like she'll like say stuff jokingly, and I'm like, that is exactly what we do.
Yes.
You would be perfect at this, and she has no confidence in it. But she does. I guess as far as the hobby goes, D&D is like is pretty harmless. Like, I'm not going out to a bar. I'm not.
It's
like,
pretty harmless. I like.
Although
that.
we drink a lot of beer in the school.
yeah.
One of the best things about my hobby is it's pretty harmless.
But I mean, I am gone for several hours, several times a month, and I think she just knows that I'm just over rolling dice with my friends, and not in a gambling type way. I'm not losing any money except for the large amount of money that I've spent on books and minis. But
right. Although I will say about that, I was on Amazon, and I try to buy half my stuff from Amazon and half my stuff from my friendly local gaming shop because I want them to stay in business, but I can't buy it all there. But I was on Amazon pricing, wanting to buy a bunch of the new 5th edition hardbounds, and I added it all up, and it was like, I don't know, $87 or something if I bought everything I wanted. And Catherine was like, wow, that's a lot of money on D&D. I was like, Catherine, that is less than one round of golf. I was like, I used to play golf all the time.
That's one pair of shoes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I used to play golf all the time, and I'd be for business. I'm like, that's one round of golf. She's like, yeah, you're totally right. Just get it. I was like, of course.
For hours.
Yeah. I was like that honestly, because it was, it's the basically a year-long campaign plus the player's handbook plus the monster manual plus the DMG. That'd be 2 years of fun.
Yeah.
Well, part of the podcast is I want people to share with their friends. So the more it's shared, like with our wives, or you can share it with your husband if you want, Mickey. Right.
I'm trying to get my sister to play. She played once.
Yeah, she played that game.
My sister played once with us. She was hilarious. My
Was she
sister's
awesome?
worse than I am. My sister's like...
By worse than, she means
by worse
just
than
as
me.
funny.
I mean,
Right.
just as far as just having that preconceived notion of what geeky stuff is and what D&D is. And I told her, come with
But
us.
she's worse than you, and you were just at Dragon Con all weekend.
I know.
I just like to point that out.
I just so you know, just so the listeners know, even the other ones, the well is deep. Once you dive in, it goes forever.
We still have a half an hour here. Let's go.
So we talked. I talked her into actually coming with us to a game, and she's reluctant. The whole ride over, she's like, "So stupid. I'm gonna hate this. Whatever. I'm bringing my phone, so I have stuff to do." I was like, "Just try it."
Is she older or younger?
She's younger.
I didn't let her pick up the phone once, did I?
Suspend disbelief. Yeah. And she got in, and she's like, "Okay, so what am I playing?" And she ended up playing, what was it, like an elf or
She
something?
had a ranger.
A rogue.
ranger.
A rogue.
Yeah.
And
she was using a bow.
Transformed at the table. Like, her first roll was like, okay, what can I do? And we were like, you can do whatever you want. Just describe it. And she's like, so I can, like, do a backflip off this table and drop kick that guy in the head and pull out my knife and slice him? Yeah. Roll it.
If you
See
roll
if you can do it. And by the end of the night, she's like, this is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I've got a buddy.
It might be shaking that's doing it.
Yeah, you're doing it too much, and that's why it's cutting
I
out.
talk with my hands.
About a year ago, I started doing karate, and I'm totally addicted. I love it. And there's a guy who goes to all the morning classes at my dojo. And somehow I was skirting around something, and it turned out that he played Pathfinder. And so we got to talking. Turns out he's been basically in the same gaming group. You know, a guy will come and a guy will leave, but the same core group for like 13 years playing D&D and Pathfinder. And he's older than I am. He's, I think, maybe 44. We got to talking and he came to my 40th birthday and he brought me one of the Reaper miniatures of a
Cool.
particular wizard because he knows I like to play spellcasters, which is so cool. And then it turns out he invited me to come and join their game because they need someone. And one of the guys, and so we got talking. I said, well, you know, I'm not big on the rules. I don't know all the detail, particularly in Pathfinder. I'm not very experienced. I'm not a rules lawyer. And he said, oh, we got that covered. We got a guy. He's not a rules lawyer, but he knows every single Pathfinder rule ever written. And I looked at him. I said, his name's not Scott by any chance, is it?
Was it that
He
guy
said,
from
yeah.
the Society guy?
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
Scott who played Pathfinder Society with Joe and me at Big Robot Games, who is awesome. Like, he knows every rule, but he's not in any way a jerk about it. Like,
Yeah.
he'll sit there, and if you need help, he'll be like, oh, yeah, it's this. But he's not a jerk about it. And it shows it's kind of a small world. So I'm at karate with this guy who plays with this other guy who I've already played with. And
6 degrees of D&D.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
But, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have known that this guy ever played, but somehow you just drop a word, and all of a sudden you're both in, like,
I think part of that with what you had said earlier, and then JJ kind of rebutted it a bit about a small group. I think it's not necessarily a small group, but it's hard to find people.
yes.
Because no one's advertising it. No one wears it on their sleeve. Like, Mickey took we got a Chessex 3-pound dice, a 6-sided dice, and she now uses that as a paperweight at work to let everyone know, just subtly,
Right.
that she is a geek. She has a 6-sided dice that's 3 pounds and huge, and it's a paperweight on her desk now.
Wait, 6-side or 20-side?
6-sided dice.
Oh, okay.
And
So you can pretend it was
it's
as
the
big as-
size of my palm. It goes.
That's awesome. Well, I have a T-shirt. You guys have probably seen it, and it's just a green T-shirt, and it's got the set of dice, and it just says "Choose your weapon."
Uh-huh.
And so I'll just bust that out, you know, every couple of weeks, and it's the same thing. Like, most times, no one says anything, but every once in a while, someone would be like, "Oh, what do you play?"
Exactly.
I'm like, "All right, let's chat."
Play? What do you mean play? I just found the shirt out on the road.
Although with the internet, it's a lot easier these days. Like
Yeah.
the whole reason I got to Big Robot is there's a site called like meetup.com.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I found it.
And they had like this group and if you look on there now, there's like several if you're willing to drive like an hour to them. But like it's with the age of the geek, it's getting to be a lot easier to find gaming groups.
Well, not even that. Like, I was playing for a while on Fantasy Grounds, which is a Visual Basic service that allows you to. It has all the rules already coded into it, and as a DM, all you do is you import some monsters and you load a map, and it populates a grid automatically. And if the map already has lines on it, it'll populate the grid onto those lines, and you can just go right from there. Just put your mini in, and you can load the monsters up. They'll populate up onto the thing, and you can play everyone all at once on one platform.
Yeah,
And
virtual.
Hail King Nerd.
I'm just saying.
I told you.
It's virtual. It's virtual tabletops.
Yeah.
One of them, Roll20, just had another Kickstarter where they made a few more $1 million.
Yeah.
To keep their product going and evolving. And
I was just listening to one about.
it's the
Have you heard
virtual.
about D20 Pro?
yeah, I have that. I
Oh.
have Fantasy Grounds D20 Pro. I use Roll20. The problem with it is
Oh.
I've always used them. Now they experience this. Another
All hail
another
Saul
one I
Sparks.
use is called Master Plan. The guy wrote this program for D&D 4th edition, and I have my projector and I had it pointed at the table, and they played maybe 2 or 3 sessions, I think, at that guy's house. And it's all of the minis essentially for the bad guys are on the screen, essentially on the table, and they put their minis on that as well. So the projector just had their minis, and you had the full map. So there's the forest, and you have the squares, and you're moving your minis around. And it's to me that was to augment the tabletop. I still have not gotten the hang of or like the actual online play because of how slightly delayed voice communication is. It becomes so confusing when you get 4 or 5 people trying to talk at the same time, and
Right.
I just can't quite get there yet. I need this. Is why, for me, one of the big things we did here is this is a tabletop RPG session, not an online RPG session.
Back a while ago, Microsoft came out with that giant tablet. I
Surface.
think they called it the Surface at the time,
Yeah.
which is like what they call their little tablets now.
Yep.
But like it was the 3-foot wide thing, and like the only cool thing about it was they pulled up this like Dungeons and Dragons app, and you had the grid, and you could actually lay your players on the grid, and then it would register them on the surface. So you could if you did a spell, which you picked up your mini and tapped the table, you could see the fire come out of your mini basically from the table, and it was the coolest thing ever. I think those things cost like $6,000 or something.
I
like
have
that,
all
but-
of the parts to build my own. I
But
just
it
haven't done
was
it yet.
so cool.
You don't really want a car, Mike. I mean, you can get a Surface.
Now, if I can drive this conversation back to what Kurt said earlier about how,
Why not?
as a child, you're into the creativity aspect of it, but as we get older, we start craving that strategy, and I think that's what I like most about the game now is I like the strategy aspect combined with the role play aspect. If I'm not challenged intellectually while I'm here, then I don't find myself enjoying the game as much as I could.
Right. Yeah, and I did not want to imply that we're not interested in the creativity or the imagination or the role-playing side of it. It's just I think it's even more interesting now that we have the strategic mind to go along with it. Because I'm still very interested in the role-playing part and the imagination.
Right, I think about that from those two perspectives because, like I said, I make up games with my girls, and they'll come up with something like I swing the big hammer and a vortex comes out of the air and it sucks up all the bad guys and they're gone. But as an adult, we think logically, how long is that going to take? That's probably like 10
That's
rounds. There's no way I could do that right now. You start to think about how it could happen instead of just letting it happen, and I think that invades some of what we
I've
do.
really changed since I started playing, which it hasn't been that long, but when I started and we were playing Encounters and it's 4th edition. 4th edition is so mini-based, and you would look at the table and plan out if you got your guy around the side, you could get flanking, and it's super into that. And then ever since I stopped playing that, I think in action movies, when I'm playing, I'm not thinking strategy at all. I'm thinking of doing the craziest, coolest thing that the game will allow me to do.
And even stuff it won't allow you to do.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And, I don't know Joe that well, but that's got to appeal to him because there's no other way I would have gotten in this group. One of the big things we talked about was I'm not opposed to minis. If you like it, that's cool. But I'm much more theater of the mind. Let me imagine it. Let me see the room how I want to. And last week when we played, or a couple weeks ago, I said, can I reach that goblin? And just tell me if I can reach him. If I can, I'm going to do something. If I can, I'll do something else. I don't want to have to count off 7 moves, and there's a corner which is half distance, and there's, I'm not opposed to difficult cover slowing me down. It's fine, but I don't like counting it all off every single turn for 3 hours.
And that's something I think of back to the early D&D, before 3 and 3.5.
Right.
So original and AD&D. I don't ever remember saying I don't have enough movement to hit the bad guy. I don't in my memory that never happened. You could always do something.
Right, and even though concepts like reach or there's a lot of things in there that make sense if you're going to make a super rules laden 3.5 Pathfinder type game, but I don't know, maybe I just don't have the patience at this point. I'm totally enamored of the Pathfinder world. I love Galarian. I'm going to be in a game. I'm going to enjoy it. But I'm very much drawn towards, I think, where 5th edition is trying to go and where it sounds like Dungeon World is, and to some degree Dungeon Crawl Classics, that just describe it, and if you can do it, we'll see if we can make it happen.
I see that, and I can see how theater of the mind could be appealing, but take someone like me who's never done something like this before. I liked the fact that I was introduced to it via 4th edition because it gave me that structure. Because it's hard, I think, I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure there's others out there who are like me, it's hard to imagine it and put yourself in this world without some borders, some boundaries. And minis and the grid allowed that. It allowed me to count off my 5 squares and figure out where the box was.
Right.
And then you could start figuring out how to work your way around the box.
And I think learning in 4th edition, especially with encounters, you had a map with a visual reference every time too. So when that encounter starts, if it's in that village, you have the Wizards of the Coast supplied the map. That was the village with the roads you come in on. You start here, the building's over there, the goblins are going to come out of this building, and so you have that. I think that visual reference definitely
Yeah,
helps
it's
a
like
lot.
trading wheels. It's trading wheels
when you're learning the system. For
It was
sure.
like playing a somewhat complicated board game every week.
Right.
And I loved it. It was so fun to just like you put your pieces out and you could see everyone had painted their piece like to exactly how they thought that their character should look, and
I think they're just kind of different games.
Yeah.
Like I really think
They-
of
they
4th
are.
edition as a distinct game from 1st edition or maybe 5th edition.
4th edition is
It's
very,
very
much
unique.
tactical war
Yeah.
game. It's not so much role play. Not that you can't role play
Right.
in 4th edition. Just the rules for 4th edition was very tactical war
Right.
game based.
I think I was telling Joe this before, but it was sort of hard to role play in 4th edition because, like, I found like if you had these skills and all your skills had these great explanations, descriptions on what they were, and you'd be like, and I rained down the axe and hit him, and then you had to wait a second to be like,
yes.
so is he dead?
So Kurt,
you
didn't play
actually
4th
hit him.
edition?
I never played any 4th edition.
Okay, so those who did, remember the cards. You have your power
right.
card.
I know about them.
The power specifically says on it something like what Mike was saying. So you have this barbarian power where the flavor text on it says, you wield your warhammer on high and strike down with a force of 1,000 mountains, and you do 15 points of damage. The thing has 300 hit points, and that wording doesn't match what
Yeah.
really happened anyway.
So, so the role playing just never happened.
It was a
'cause
little
it was
tough.
like, well, yeah, I took the thunder down on him, but he is perfectly fine. He's not even bloodied at all.
Yes, and bloodied, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the limiting factor to 4th edition was the fact that because combat was so intricate, it also took so long, and that limited your role play aspect of the game
Yeah.
if you only have like 2 or 3 hours to play.
Yeah.
Like Joe can attest to encounters. Once you got into a fight, that was it. Like it was 4 hours.
Yeah, it was
Especially if you
tough.
had like 8 to 10 people. If you had 8 to 10 people there, you like took your turn and then you go get a drink because you're not going to be playing for like 20 minutes because it will never get back around to you.
That's what the limiting factor to 4th edition was. That's why I kind of like 5th edition. Like you move and you attack. That's pretty much it. You cast a spell. You don't have a move, a minor, a reaction.
Right.
Move
And-
minor
and-
standard.
Go ahead, Joe.
I like to try and keep combat at the same pace as the role play.
Exactly.
Because to me, the way the games are designed is the inverse. You can get hours of role play done in 20 minutes. You can get 20 minutes of combat done in hours.
Right.
And it's a dichotomy. It doesn't fit my brain, so I try to get the combat to move as quick
Right.
as everything else.
I had a couple thoughts based on what Mike and JJ and Mickey said. First of all, I don't want to imply, or I don't think we want to imply to anyone who's listening that 5th edition or other games are not tactical. It's just a different way of thinking about it. Like, for example, we played last week, and if you're listening to this, you may not have heard that yet, and at one point we came up into a room, and Joe said something like, the room is 60 feet wide by 100 feet deep, and there's something 20 feet in that you can see or whatever. And so in our brain, we're thinking, well, if it's 60 feet wide, I can get across there in 2 turns, or if it's 100 feet long, I can get across in 3 or 4 turns. We kind of know that without counting it out on the board. I'm still thinking tactically, it's just in a different way. But for me, the big thing is, and I don't know whether you guys would agree with this or not, when you play with minis or pawns and you get to the big bad and the dungeon master puts down the black dragon or the red dragon and it's a 2-inch high mini or a cardboard thing, like, to me, that's just such a downer. Whereas if Joe says, like, and we haven't gotten to that yet, but you walk in a room and, Black Fang is at the other end, and he describes it. Like, that is all in my head, and it's how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no mini, not the best mini in the world that's going to be as good as that.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The visual to get you in that frame of mind is good. But to me, being able to get into the frame of mind without the visual can be better. To me, it's the difference of what you had said earlier, Kurt, about the difference between watching a movie and reading a book.
Yeah. In 3.5, like I had, I think that's probably one of the best Wizards mini areas was. I had a friend who was just into the minis, like probably worse than Mike is, and he would buy every mini as it came out, and he bought the $130 Red Colossal Dragon with a 4x4 base that stood 12 inches tall.
Oh my gosh!
It was put that out there, and it's just like you look at your little guy and you see this thing like sitting 12 inches off. That gave you the epic scale. It was just kind of like, holy crap, that's amazing.
That is cool.
But not everyone has $130 to spend on a figurine made of plastic. Granted, it looked beautiful.
And how often will you use it?
And how often?
As often as possible, because they cost $130, Joe.
See, but I would say the same thing. But then, in the defense of my own stupidity, I think I mentioned previously, I went and, for one of the Kickstarters, I bought the Dwarven Forge tiles, or cavern tiles, and they're awesome. And I've used them to play games with my kids. I still haven't used them for a role-playing game because, to me, they're really only going to fit when we do a dungeon crawl. And it will be fun, making a random dungeon and do a dungeon crawl, and you'll have figures that look like they're in a dungeon, and we'll build rooms, and there's little doors and stuff, but that wouldn't have fit anything we did last week.
No.
Or
Right.
the time before, or the time before.
There's a time and place,
Right.
and a tool for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's so great about tabletop gaming generally
And I
is
spent
we've
like
got the
$200
complete
on that.
spectrum. What's that?
And I spent like $200 on that. I still haven't used it.
We've got the
Oops.
complete spectrum. I think Mike said it absolutely perfectly that 4th edition was like a really complex board game. And while I didn't play it, I am very familiar with it. And I love board games. Like I'm teaching my kids Risk this weekend, and I can't wait to play with them.
You mean Ruffle Stomp them?
What's that?
You mean Ruffle Stomp them?
I haven't heard
never
that.
heard
I don't
of
know that. What is that? What is that reference?
Ruffle is rolling on the floor laughing, and Stomp means just ruin them, so just laugh gleefully at their misery.
Ruffle. I got you now.
Ruffle, I
Ruffle
get it.
Stomp.
But,
I'm like, who's Rumpelstiltskinning? What?
Rumpelstiltskin?
Huh?
but you know, with,
I get it, kind of, sort of.
with tabletop gaming, you've got everything from 2-player card games, competitive or cooperative, all the way up through 8 or 10 people sitting around playing a full-blown role-playing game.
Dragon Con had a panel. It started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it went to 1 in the afternoon. And every year, they get 200-plus people to come and play one big battle. They rent out this whole banquet hall, and they have the head DM and a bunch of assistant DMs, and you're all trying to take out one big bad.
That's pretty cool.
200 first level.
200 first level characters trying to take out some big bad.
That's interesting. Now, did you see any organized play for 5th edition? Did they have the epics?
We tried to go to a 5th edition panel, and
Yeah.
it was packed.
It was packed.
Like the room, the room according to the little sign, because every fire marshal thing has a sign. The room said it was able to handle 350 people, and there was still 70 some odd people standing in line trying to get in.
Wow. That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
That's cool.
I think we talked about this a little another time, but I think there's 3 tiers of organized play for 5th edition. There's encounters for the quick 2-hour sessions every week. I think they're calling it epics, which is going to be for the cons. And then there's a third one that I can't remember that is like the monthly game or the bi-weekly game that's more hardcore. And all of them are going to tie into this Rise of Tiamat storyline for the year.
That's
but
cool.
but different stories that can mesh together, and you can play any or all of them, and you can move characters between them, which I don't know totally how it works, but I know if you go to the Wizards site and you go to I think they call it Adventurers League is what they're calling the overarching organized play. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with that.
It's definitely topical with the new edition of.
4th had several different levels too.
Oh,
but
yeah,
they
they
had
did.
Layer Assault,
Layer
which
Assault,
was like
yeah.
the
Hardcore.
like
You're going to die.
like you were told to make the best you could make because you were probably going to die. And in the 3 or so times that I played Layer Assault, I think we only succeeded once, and that was because my friend Brant just totally broke the system and made a guy that the only way he was ever going to be hit is if the DM rolled a 20. So he just stood there and like took the hits while we were all like, "Help us, Brant! Help us!"
That's funny.
But yeah, and then they have the encounters for the low, and then the normal game for the middle. But I do like how they're rolling everything together, and I haven't read too much about the Tiamat thing, but it sounds good.
Yeah.
I like dragons.
I think I may have my
Overclocking
first
characters.
real DMing experience because I have a group that wants to play, and none of them have played 5th edition at all. And the guy who would be the logical DM and is a good DM, he's got 2 kids and a 3rd one on the way, and I think he just wants to play.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I said, I'll take a crack at it, and I probably will roll. They're doing a 2-part. I think part 1 is Horde of the Dragon Queen and then Rise of Tiamat, but it all goes together. And so I might just buy the books and try to run it, see what happens.
Cool. And it's something I do want to talk about more when we talk more about RPGs, but any advice that we can help with, of course, we should. One thing I would tell you, though, is I find it's always more prep when you buy something that's already published. You actually have to spend more time learning it to make sure you do it right.
Yep.
Otherwise, if you start it off wrong, you can break the whole adventure right at the beginning, and you've got to go back and fix it before you proceed.
Kind of like we did.
Yeah, like we did.
That was an audio problem. We could have continued.
I mean, I'd love to homebrew a game someday, but I don't think I'm there. Not for
Just
my
do
first
it.
campaign.
I think you could do it.
Well, it's funny because
Totally do it,
I wanted to jump back a little, if it's okay with Joe, and talk a little bit about our early gaming experiences. And I was trying to get a sense. Mike, you talked about playing video games. Did you play RPGs when you were younger, tabletop when you were young, or did you just start with computer?
No, started with video games very much. I didn't really play anything like a Dungeons and Dragons till I was like 3rd year in college.
Okay.
So
I bet JJ did. But Mickey, you did not.
Did not.
So
I mean,
JJ, did you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't. I mean, I played the obligatory Nintendo games when I was a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I had an Atari, a
Duck
Nintendo.
Hunt doesn't count.
I mean,
Duck
Mario.
Hunt
I was
is the
pretty
biggest
hardcore.
RPG.
Stuff like that.
That
but
was
I
me doing
more-
the dog for those of you at home.
I hated that dog. I was
I
more
hear
into
that
like
dog's gonna
books,
be in the new Smash Bros.
What are they called? Like you said, choose your own adventure types book, mystery novels. I honestly did not play D&D until we lived in Asheville that one time.
And JJ, you played like 1st edition AD&D?
No, I started in 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah. I started when I graduated high school, and that was in 2004.
But you've played other
Okay,
stuff
so Joe,
beyond
did you
D&D.
play? So see, I played as a kid, like
Yeah.
3rd, 4th, 5th grade, which D&D. I don't know, but I think if you look at it, it says something like ages 12 and up, and I was probably 9, maybe 8 when I started. And we definitely, I was a rule breaker, but we did not play the game correctly. We did not know all the rules. We just freaking loved reading about elves and dwarves and these evil sorcerers. And we had I remember I had 3 modules. I mean, I remember the modules, but then we had a guy, Jason Oplinus was our DM, and he just made crap up. And the one I loved the best, I talked about it with Joe at one point, he must have ripped it off of Ravenloft, because it was a horror, you're going into a castle with zombies and ghosts and the big Dracula type figure. And I didn't know that it was Ravenloft then, and maybe it wasn't. Maybe Ravenloft wasn't even out. I don't know. But whatever it was awesome. Like, it was one of the 2 most fun games I've ever played in. And I just remember the feel of that game as a 4th grader or a 5th grader sitting under the slide. Is like, that's what I always kind of held with and said, someday, like, if I get the right group or the right game, like, it'd be fun to do this.
And it's easier, I think, to get that feeling from role playing than it is from watching a movie or reading a book.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I love horror movies and I love adventure movies, but it's a different feeling.
It's it's more real. It's more personal and over role
Because
play.
you're the hero.
What
You're
else
the
is
hero of the
interesting,
story.
and I feel like I'm talking too much, so
You
I
are.
apologize.
you are.
I want to hear more from JJ, I really do, and everyone. But,
But I'm not going to shut up.
Well, I'm trying to throw questions out there. Like, I want to hear what people. When you role play characters, do you have a particular type, whether it's a class, a personality that you like to play? And if so, do you find anything psychologically interesting about that?
Yes. I always play girls, and they're always just really sarcastic witches, typically. Sometimes I'll play it. Oh, sometimes I'll play a nicer girl, but yeah, I've typecast myself into that. And as far as you said, psychological benefits, I don't know, it's an out. It's not who I am in real life, so it's fun to play somebody that you're not.
Yeah, she's not a half.
So wait, you're not a sarcastic girl
I'm
in
not
real
a
life?
sarcastic bitch in real life.
Okay, so to further that along, like I've discovered through role playing that in order for me to really get into a character, I have to build a backstory for it. I have to have what would so and so do? Like, what would this character do? I don't think about what I would do in a situation. So with that, like with her first experience, we spent. I think we were driving to your sister's house at some point. It was a 4-hour drive, and she put on her little audio book, and I was like, you know what? Stop for a second. You're going to play this weekend, and we're going to really get into a longer campaign. Let's build up this thing. So it's like, so your character, what was her early backstory? What was her early childhood like? And she's like, it goes off on this tangent, and then like I would build off of that. Okay, so what happened to your mom? Why'd she leave? And so on and so forth. And like it created this character and it made it very real.
And to this day, that's my favorite character.
Yeah, it made it very real for you. And like I can't get into a character. Like when someone says, "Here, let's play a one-shot adventure," and it's like you probably noticed that I've not gotten into character yet with this group. Like I'm here, I'm playing, but I have not created a character because I can't. I don't know what it is about pre-generated things. I can't do anything with this character.
Yeah. I totally. When Joe said that the first thing we were going to play was the pre-generated characters on 5th edition, just so we could work together as a group, I was like, but we're still coming up with names and backstories, right? Like we're not just gonna have them be nameless, faceless people, right? Like they don't have names. Like finally, I was like, well, it says stuff on the sheet, but. There's other stuff. There's going to be other stuff.
I know. Well, and I've been feeling guilty because the way I'm playing my character, just in terms of the moves he's making, directly contradict
What's on the sheet?
his personality on the sheet. And I'm like, I'm fine playing the dwarf. I'm fine being the cleric. I'm fine with my cousins being the rock seers and all that. But I'm supposed to be insecure and always waiting for others to act before I act. And I'm like, let's run right in and do something stupid.
You might make a little adjustment there.
Yeah.
Coming up.
But it's interesting. I almost always play women characters. And I vastly prefer, both in computer and to play women characters. And I'm not entirely sure what that says about me. My mother-in-law, who's very into Jungian psychology, says...
I'm not entirely sure why she had to grab a towel when you said that.
My mother-in-law says that I'm very in touch with my anima, which is your feminine side in Jungian psychology. But I think it might just mean I'm weird.
And I guess I have to take some of the blame for Kurt actually playing a male character here, because for my ease, I said I want you playing the gender you are to start, because it's just easier for me to keep track.
Well, and we have a lady here, which does make a difference. What's that?
If you do a voice the whole time, then I'm fine.
That would be awesome.
Well,
But if your girl sounds like, "Hi, I'm really happy to be here,"
Super excited.
It just means she smoked stogies since her early age.
Yeah.
That's all.
Too much cigar and wine.
Especially if he was playing a dwarf.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, in my experience, it's relatively rare to have a lady at the gaming table. So having Mickey here, maybe we don't need my feminine presence.
Representing.
One time, we had more females at the table than males. At one time in my gaming experience,
awesome.
I think
we had four.
I
We
like
had four
when that
girls
happens.
and 2 guys.
That's awesome.
At the table.
Girls can rock D&D.
They
When I-
can. There's no
when I
reason they
ran
can't.
that the all-night Dungeon World game at Big Robot, I think it was an even. I think there were 10 people at the table when we started, not counting me, and I think it was 5 and 5.
Wow.
And it was too much, mind you, but it did happen, and it was pretty cool.
That is cool.
So what have been your favorite characters? We'll go around the room. Like, who has been your favorite character?
Do you want me to pick one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, let's see. Now I have to think about that, because I don't play that. I don't get to play that many characters, and the ones I play, well, you guys have been there for them actually. The games that I've been a player at, just counting my own, which I will. I really enjoyed playing the Bard that I played at that game, at that guy's house. But mainly because I pushed myself into the character. I would sit pretending I'm playing a lute, and I just did a little singing while we were going. So everyone else is taking a rest after a combat, and I'm just sitting there saying, "And we killed the guy," and I just had a lot of fun with that, just getting into it. And I guess I don't know that the character was so much fun as I had fun sitting there and annoying people by being a bard.
Well, that's a class that you don't play that often, probably. And it's
for me, that's one I prefer to play.
Oh, really?
Because I like to play the guy who thinks he knows everything, but really doesn't. He just knows all the stories. And to me, that's a bard. A bard knows all the stories, and it's almost mythological and hearsay for everything, rather than the wizard who actually knows stuff. I like the bard's perspective. And I mean the traditional one in a D&D game.
Right.
So you're rolling for bardic lore. I mean, what the hell's that? Right? Where the wizard has knowledge. There's a big difference there.
What about you, Mike?
Well, the most recent game that I've been playing with Joe, I've been playing as George Washington, who, in a attempt on his deathbed to live on, he gets transported to the fantasy world of Kor, and then he becomes a paladin in this fantasy world. So it's George Washington, the first president of the United States, as a paladin, and the character, we played it so long and I think I tend to start my characters as being like very lawful and good, and like the longer I play a character, like it just goes downhill like crazy. So like it went from at the very beginning, George was like the beacon of hope and truth and helping this race of deep gnomes escape their bondage, to like later he became a pirate and started knocking people's faces against bars and stuff like that.
The turning point, the rest of the group feels the turning point was the time where George Washington got sick of the barkeep not giving the information they wanted, took his head and slammed his face into the bar. And that was the turning point, we feel, because he didn't hurt an innocent soul before that.
No,
but he hurt many innocent souls after that.
Yes. Yeah.
Wicked cool.
Yeah.
Hard to follow that one. To be honest, my characters aren't that interesting just because I haven't played many campaigns through. The two that I think of were, when I was younger, I played the elf, which in those early editions meant the wizard. And I had what I considered a high elf wizard who went to the Ghost Tower of Inverness and did the Ravenloft type horror adventures, and he just took names. I mean, I just loved playing him. And then recently, unfortunately, I only got 3 or 4 episodes with her, but I was playing this female rogue in Pathfinder Society. And Pathfinder Society is very structured, and you can use pre-gens or you can create your own character. And so I rolled her up, and I was new to Pathfinder, but I liked the way she was going, which was that I tried to roll her high on charisma and diplomacy and everything instead of focusing on the combat skills, with the goal of having her be diplomatic and or kind of using her charm, her sexual, attractiveness, her wiles to make that really be her strength. And I didn't get to play that out fully, but in my mind, I loved her. And then I had also set her up as a cousin of, Pathfinder has these kind of, I guess they're kind of the archetype characters. They have, when they're promoting it, they have Valeros, who's the fighter, and Ezrin, who's the wizard, and they have the rogue is this female rogue, Mariciel. And so I set my character up as a younger cousin of her. And so I had this kind of story in my mind that, where she was trying to kind of live up. So I liked her. I wish I got to play her more. She may come back around in another form in the future.
Unfortunately, Pathfinder Society and Dungeons and Dragons encounters don't allow you to roleplay a character.
They don't. They don't. And that game died when the shop died. And but like I said, she may some form of her may come back around. I liked her.
I like to hear that.
My favorite character I've played is a recent one. Joe got to experience him when I first created him, but it was Wayne.
Wayne.
Who's Wayne?
Gosh.
Wayne is a...
That directly links to that tech session I was talking about with the projector, where I shut it down early one night because Wayne did something.
Because Wayne did something.
Yeah.
What did Wayne do?
Stole arrows.
No names.
There was another character in the group who was very fond of his arrows, and because of this character's extreme attachment to the arrows, Wayne had to have them.
Wait, what type of character is Wayne, or what class?
He was a bard in 4th edition.
Okay.
Mischievous
But
type.
Wayne just wanted, like, he didn't steal. Okay, he always replaced with something of equal value. So, silver arrows became like another rare type of arrow. Like, he went and procured another type of rare arrow to replace the silver arrows. But we were going to go fight werewolves, and without silver arrows, you're pretty much. But so Wayne took the silver arrows, and it just downhilled from there. And I played Wayne a couple other times now too, and I borrowed it. I borrowed the character from a series called The Alloy of Law, and it's the character of Wayne is probably one of my favorite written characters I've ever seen.
Just yeah.
Is that a book
Cookie.
series?
Yeah, it's a book series by Brandon
Brandon
Sanderson.
Sanderson.
What was the name again?
Alloy of Law.
Alloy of Law. Interesting.
He's an interesting character because he has his own little moral compass,
Yep.
and
morals
it
are his
doesn't
own.
really match up with anybody else's.
No, I just
So,
wanted to make sure my
that's
mic
neat.
was good. I moved it.
You're fine. You're fine, Kurt.
All right. So, what's my favorite character? My favorite character, hands down, is Thea. Now, Thea is an elven monk in 4th edition, which is a weird mix. And she's my favorite because we took the time to make a backstory for her. You know, she was born in her town. Her mom was like the high priestess or whatever in her area. She was exiled from her home and was killed at a very early age. So Thea was raised by monks. And what was cool about her is because she's an elven monk, so she had all the neat powers of an elf with all the kick-ass powers of a monk. It was just a really neat dynamic to play. Yeah. And she always had like a chip on her shoulder where she had absolutely no diplomacy. It was all aggression. She was running in there and she was gonna beat somebody up until something happened.
Yeah, it was in playing along with Thea that I started using the term badassery. Her badassery level was always way up.
Hey there, little fella.
Yeah.
Hey there, little
Hey there,
fella.
buddy.
Come
Little
here,
buddy.
let me kick your ass.
I should know this, but monks in 4th edition are like focused on unarmed combat, hand-to-hand.
Ish.
But
Yeah.
She had a quarterstaff.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to wrap this part up. And one of the things I do want to mention is a common theme. We did talk about Pathfinder Society, Dungeons & Dragons Encounters, and I would say anybody listening, look them up in your area because that's how this group of people at adventuresfromtheshed.com, we decided to get together at a local game store. And because of that, we all met each other, and then later on, we started this up. So I would definitely encourage people that are listening to look up Dungeons & Dragons Encounters and Pathfinder Society, any organized gameplay at the local
Meetup.com.
store.
Meetup.com's a great
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it was actually through Meetup.com that Kurt replied to this.
Right, and if you need to find a shop, the Wizards of the Coast has a store locator that lists every store that's doing encounters officially, and Paizo.com, Paizo, which is the company that produces and publishes Pathfinder. They also have a whole section devoted to Pathfinder Society on their page.
Yeah.
There are other great games out there we haven't even mentioned, like Shadowrun and Star Wars and all kind of awesome stuff. We'll talk about them in the future. We may play them in the future.
Okay, everybody say goodbye.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
We hope you were entertained by listening to us talk about our experiences, both with tabletop RPGs and life in general. You can find more information about us at our website on the About Us page. Thanks for joining us. The preceding podcast was brought to you by Shedcast. You can find us online at adventuresfromtheshed.com.